Plate Armor with Des Armstrong, and we'll be learning about plate armor building, sizing, and repairing. And that's you. Go ahead, Des.
All right. I hope everybody can see me here, right? So my name is Des Armstrong. I run the Azure Armory. I've been making armor now for almost 20 years. I've been fighting for, well, longer than that. And today what we're going to talk about is how to fix your stuff. Last year we did a explanation of pieces and what they all are. This year we're just going to talk about how to fix the stuff that you may have gotten that maybe doesn't fit right or is maybe a little rusty or beat up. Very rudimentary stuff, but if you have questions that are more in depth, just let me know and we'll kind of try and get to those too. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was rust. I've got a piece of rusty metal here. It doesn't matter if it's stainless or if it's mild or hardened steel, it's always going to rust at some point. There's a couple easy ways to do this. The easiest being with a bench grinder and a wire wheel. This is a wire wheel. You can kick these up and just knock that rust off real fast. If you have a bench grinder, I assume you already know that. So for the people who do not have a bench grinder, a piece of 120 sandpaper or a Brillo pad or a Scotch-Brite will do a real quick job of this rust. Here's our little rusty sample. Just a little bit of scrubbing. Make sure you go in circles because that way it'll keep all of your scarring kind of camouflage. And that'll take that rust right out. So that's a pretty quick, easy way to make your life a little easier. If you want to make sure that you don't have rust on your pieces, spray paint is always a good way to go. I go with Rust-Oleum black because it's easy and cheap. But, you know, we're all kind of lazy and we don't clean our stuff after we're done playing in it. So whatever we have to do to make that work. All right, as far as fixing things goes, we need a few basic tools to do anything that we're going to do in a shop. Let me get that out of the way. So I have a few hammers here. This is a plenishing hammer. It's a small hammer. I've rounded over the head so it's nice and smooth. And what I can do with this is knock a dent out or set a rivet, which we'll do both of those in a minute. I have a larger version of that, which is used for pushing metal if I have to push it. Then I've got these wider faced hammers that are made so that we can flatten something on the outside as opposed to the inside. And then we've got these little pointy guys here for reaching up into things like maybe a comb or the crevice on the edge of a collar or a sleeve. You'll also need a file. Files are good if we have any corners that are a little pointier than they need to be or an edge that's a little sharp. Important thing with files is when you are filing, files only work in one direction. If you try and go both directions, what happens is you dull out the file because the file is only cut in one orientation. And we don't want to dull our files out because we can use these guys for years if we don't destroy them ourselves. You have a dull file, it's your own fault. Let's see. When we, well, let's start this first. All right, so we went over some of the basic tools. So we're going to set a rivet real fast because I know a lot of times people have rivets that'll pop loose and you'll have to replace those. I could move to my anvil, but we're going to try this here in front of y'all with a hammer because we don't need high-class expensive tools to do this stuff. We just need things that'll work. I'm trying to do this with all kinds of products and things that you guys have at home or easy access to. So just for fun, I'm going to put a hole in this piece of leather. This is a leather punch. I'm sure everybody knows what that is already. Okay, so I saw something, but it went away quickly. So I don't know what David just asked.
Sorry, that was me just asking if David would like banner points for this class.
Sorry.
I was just asking if David would like banner points for this class.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry to distract.
This is all new to me too, so kind of trying to work through it together, right? All right, so this is a hole punch. Drills work just as good, but I have a hole punch and it's quieter and faster, so we're going to do that. So this is just a piece of scrap. It doesn't really matter. I am just doing this to show you a rivet and how it goes together. Now, this is a nail. This is a roofing nail. I'm just going to stick this in here and clip it off. The trick is to not clip it too short and not clip it too long. If you clip it too long, it'll bend over. If you clip it too short, it won't hold good enough. So we're going to clip this just about 1/8 of an inch from the material we're trying to get riveted to. Looks about like that, which is hard, I'm sure, to see in that picture. And then we can set that rivet. We're going to take our hammer with the round side or the ball point, whatever. It does change things a little bit. If you use the ball, you'll get a wider head at the top. If you use the round side, you'll get a shorter head, but it'll be compressed into the hole. And hopefully we can do this without knocking the phone down, so we'll see. Now, the heavier the hammer that I'm using as an anvil, the less this will bounce around, the easier it is. So if you have a bigger hammer, use a bigger hammer. Or if you have an anvil, use an anvil. So now we have successfully attached a rivet to our leather. It can't come loose. Now, a lot of times, you guys have straps. The strap holding the armor together will snap and tear, and then you have to replace this. Getting that rivet off is not nearly as easy as putting it in. If you have enough room, you can take your cutters and cut it from the back. And I do have enough room here, but we're going to do it the hard way so that you can see how that's done, and then it'll make it a little easier when you have to do it. Yeah. Also, these kind of rivets where we're using a roofing nail as opposed to Chicago screws or a Brad from not Harbor Freight, but Tandy leather, or I guess regular old pop rivets, these guys are going to hold up a lot better. You have to put around 8,000 pounds of force to snap this off. So you're not doing that in regular fighting. All right, so taking this rivet off. It's easiest to just cut that leather right off. Oh no, something happened. I assume I'm still here. All right, so we can just take this leather off. It takes a little bit of chewing to get into it. There we go. Trying to keep this all in frame. And once we can get under it and get the leather out, we can usually slip the cutter in and then just cut that thing off. There we go. Now, if you can't get it like that, you have to do the old-fashioned way of cutting it with this file, just a little bit at a time until you get it all the way out. It's kind of a pain in the butt, so if you can get it with the cutters, get it with the cutters. All right, so we got through that. Trimming a piece to file. All right, so a lot of times, I'll grab this guy here. All right, so a lot of times we have a piece like our breastplate here, and maybe it doesn't fit me too right. Maybe it's too tight in the chest, or maybe it's, in too far on the shoulders. Well, a couple of things we can do. First off, metal is malleable. We can make it do what we want it to do. If this is too tight in the chest, I can pull this apart a little bit to get that expansion. Now, this is 18 gauge steel. If you got something heavier, 16, 14, the concept's still the same. It just maybe takes a little more oomph to get it out there, right? But when we have to trim, that's where things get a little more complicated. Because we don't want to trim it wrong the first time. We want to do it one time and get it done right. So an easy way to do this is with a Sharpie. And just make your marks wherever you need to make your marks. I'm just making marks to make marks. And then come back through. Actually, let's grab those two. All right, so I have to turn this fan back on. Hopefully that doesn't hurt y'all's ears, because I'm dying out here. It's in Texas, and we're at close to 100 degrees in my shop. So when we're cutting these guys out, these shears are made to cut different directions. You've got right-handed shears and you've got left-handed shears. Usually it's green, red, yellows are down the center. I throw those in the garbage. I don't know why they're even in a box. So when you're cutting something off, the lower tooth side is the piece of metal that's going to get messed up. You're going to throw it in the garbage. So if we're going to cut this, we're going to come in a little bit by a little bit, and this is dangerous, so we're going to put our glove on. You can use gloves with fingers. I cut mine off so that I can feel the metal and feel what's going on. All right, and you should be able to cut with these kind of cutters and a little practice anything up to about 16 gauge. After that, things get a little difficult, and it's not worth cutting. You want to go get a jigsaw or, you know, something else, because this is just not fun. All right, so now that we've got our metal cut, again, file time, because we don't want sharp edges. Only one direction, and filing does not take a lot of work and no pressure. Just let it drag across the top. And you've got a nice smooth edge. It's not going to hurt anybody. Now, a lot of y'all, I think Belgraph does too, require this to be a rounded over edge. That's not a big deal, and it's easy to fix. Here we go. So this is a chisel here. It's rounded off, so it's not going to cut the metal, but it'll bend the metal. And just so that we can do this for you, I'm going to draw a little line on there. Move my anvil out of the way. All right, and I need a different hammer, so 1 second. All right, now the reason I'm using this hammer, not this hammer, is because this hammer is all polished and smooth so that I can not mar up my metal. This hammer is a piece of garbage I got at Harbor Freight for a nickel, so I really don't care what happens to it. All right, so I've got a small groove cut into my stump. You can use a 2x4. It'll work the same way. You set that chisel up on there and give it a little whack. You can knock that material over. And that'll start to give you this kick. I got to come back and get the end a little bit because I didn't get that well enough the first time. There we go. So now we've got that little kick coming over. And we can run that all the way down around our edge. Then we'll come back to our anvil. And we can drive this flat. And then we can drive this over to where we can close that edge off. This is a lot harder on a hammer than it is on an anvil, I tell you what. All right, but that gives you the idea. So now we've got a nice round edge, except this little pointy bit that just needs to be cut off, and everybody's safe and happy. All right, planishing a piece. All right, so let's say we've got our piece of material here. This is our breastplate. Good old breastplate. We've been using this thing for years. It's a fun breastplate. We really enjoy it. But we fell down last week and we messed up our breastplate. We got these dings in here now from where we landed on some rocks. And that's just a miserable, miserable thing for our nice, pretty breastplate. So what we're going to have to do is take those out. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. And the easiest way to do it is to step off to an area that you've got your anvil and drive this back down. This is going to be loud, so just live with it. And we can drive that back into the anvil, which gets us flat. I don't know if we can see that. That's pretty flat. And then if we want to smooth that out so that we don't have these remnants, because we can still see maybe in the glare some remnants there. If this was nice and smooth, which it's not, I might switch over to the anvil. No, we'll do it here. All right, so if this was nice and smooth, it would give us a nice finish, but we'll see what kind of finish we can get off of it. And we can just work it, not hard, just light taps, and move the material, not the hammer. As you do this, it'll smooth it out little bit by little bit. If I wanted to do a good job on this, this might take me 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but we're doing a very fast job so that we can just get things done and see how things look. But let's see, there you go. That's nice and smooth. You can see a little bit of remnant from where I didn't clean it up enough. But again, I think you get the idea. All right, so what makes armor good and bad? I got a little list here I'm going off of. So one of the things that is not so easy to figure out is why your armor hurts you. And there's a lot of little things, but the one that gets overlooked constantly is the shape is not right for a human. Humans are built a particular way, and when we move in those ways, things compress and expand. Your bicep's going to get larger when you pull it in. It's going to get smaller when you go out. Your instep is going to change as you walk. And all these things change in the way that you're going to have to wear your armor. The things that are made in a lot of places, especially your Walmart bins, are made like this. This is an improperly made greave. I did this up real fast just to show a bad greave. So the problem we have here is this is very straight here at the ankle. And if you were to try and put this on and wear it, this edge is going to dig into the top of your foot. Maybe it doesn't bother you immediately, but at some point it's going to hurt, and then it's going to hurt more and more until you don't want to wear armor anymore. And we don't want you to not wear armor. We want everybody to wear armor because it's really cool. All right, so this one is made more correctly at the instep. And you can see that it comes out a lot further and it's a lot more gradual. I'll actually hold these up against each other. So just that little change makes a huge difference in the way that you can move and function in this particular piece. Same thing here. We've got a tapered shape which matches up to your leg. This one's more like what we call gutter greaves that don't match up to a human leg. And what that will do is as you're walking, things, again, don't compress right. And this guy starts rattling around and maybe he turns sideways on your foot. And it's just a miserable experience. So if you have a piece of armor that's maybe from China or India and it doesn't fit correctly, you can use some of these techniques with the cutting and the hammering to reform them into something that is more efficient and more functional to you. Another one that's real bad is bracers. I know everybody hates bracers falling down their arm. There's two fixes. One is to use a long sleeve shirt and then just strap it on over top of the shirt. That way that it can't fall down. It's attached to your shirt. Great way to fix it. The other one is to use spalders, because most people, if they got bracers, they got spalders anyway, right? Run the spalders down and then a leather strap that connects the two. That way your bracer stays up with the rest of the arm. Because your arm is tapered, everything's always going to fall down it. All right, so I know I ran through that kind of quick, but that was so I could get here and ask if y'all have any questions so I can help you with your own individual projects. So does anybody have any questions on things that I can help you to resolve?
I was curious, when you were talking about making marks to make something fit you better, how do you know where to make your marks? As a seamstress, like I try my thing on or I pin my fabric around to find the best spot, but that's a lot more work when you're moving metal.
Yeah, so A lot of it is trial and error, just like with fabric the first time you had to do that. But there are some tricks that you can use. I like to figure out what the maximum deformation is, like for the breastplate, which I'll pull back up here. This is a slotted gussets, so it'll actually compress and expand when I move my body in and out. And if I move my arms in to about here, my pectorals will push out to about that point, so that when I wear this breastplate, I can push to about the same position and it'll collapse in on itself to that point. A lot of your Chinese ones come out further because they're made one size fits all and assume that no one knows the difference, which is what gives people these bruises here in the shoulders, and then they don't want to wear their armor anymore. So again, we can make it so that it's to the maximum for our movement so that it works. Historically speaking, there's a mid-range that you go if you don't have gussets for breastplates in particular. Because in our LARPy world, you know, we're not really going to get hurt, we're not really going to die, and everything is 2.5 inches across. But in the real world, having a gap that's 1/2 inch is 1/2 inch that a sword blade can still penetrate you, or a lance thrust. So it was a lot tighter in its controls. Not that it wasn't flexible still, but it was more coverage. Did that kind of help to answer that?
Yeah, that's fun. I didn't know you could put gussets in metal.
Oh yeah, gussets are great. Articulation, because fabric, same kind of idea.
Yeah, I love gussets. I use them all the time in my fabric.
So this is a museum piece I've been working on for my museum. And it's not made to function properly, but it is made kind of right, just so I can put it in the museum right. And in the back here, if we can see that, these rivets have a slot point so that they will compress and expand. So it's locked in place, even though it looks like it's locked in place from the front. Now, oftentimes, and that's what these rivets are supposed to be for, there's a leather strap that runs all the way down the center, and then these rivets aren't even here. There's nothing holding this in place. There's a leather strap here as well, which allows this to compress completely on this side, which makes it a lot more like fabric.
Okay.
I don't have an example in front of me here, and oh, I do. Hold on. All right, so this is a fantasy piece for Dark Souls, but on the inside you can see the leather strapping, and from the outside this looks like one solid piece, but we can still now compress it all the way in. The side it'll come back out. Now this is fantasy, so it doesn't really work as well as a real piece. Real pieces will collapse basically in on themselves. It's really kind of cool, and I wish I would have had one out here to show you.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions I can answer? All right, if there's no questions about fixing armor, is there any questions in general about armor? I'm even open to historical stuff in general. I'm a wealth of knowledge, and here for another half an hour.
How did you get into armor making? Well, I'll go ahead and end the recording, and then I'd love to learn how you got into metalworking.